Today we're going to be talking about maximum oomph, and oomph is a sound effect, but we're basically going to be talking about the punchiness in your drawings. So how we can maximize this. I think I need to press Control F or Command F. Maybe. Does anybody know how I view this full screen? Oh, here. Perfect. And we're live. Okay, so we're going to be talking about maximum oomph and how we can maximize your punchiness in your paintings. So first off, I am Esben. I'm like a pretty normal guy, and I'm pretty much like the same as all of you. And I like many things, and I work for Riot, but just remember that I'm not my job, and you're like the reason that I'm here is actually for you guys. So if you guys want to have a portfolio review, or you want me to critique some stuff, or you just want to talk, just come over and say hi, and we'll have a talk. I'm pretty a normal, open guy, so just come over and say hi. I'm here for you, so take advantage of it. So what I do, I make pretty paintings or pretty pictures. And just to give you guys a little insight of the work that I've been doing, then here's a few pieces. This one is actually a piece that we're going to be grabbing some examples from during the talk. So I just want to make a shout out because it was made in collaboration with a very good friend who's actually among the crowd. He's called Felix. If you meet him here in the workshop, just say hi to him. He's an awesome dude. So I just want to give a shout out there. So a bit more of the work that I've been doing over the years. So mainly I work with splash images. And let's skip through this and just... So when you're seeing all of these pictures and when we're going through the stuff in the talk, what I really want you to remember is that things take time, and it takes practice and patience, and never be discouraged, because this was some of my early works. And where there's a will, there's a way. And I think it's beautiful. This guy, I think it's like it was a true image of myself at that time. Or this guy made me more. So this is some early works of mine. So just remember patience during the whole thing. A painting that I did only working with dodge and burn tool. It's beautiful. All right, so first off, we're going to start off with what's the most important thing in a picture. It's how it makes you feel, because not every picture has a story, or not every picture. A picture can be abstract, and in that sense, I would argue that the most important thing is the feeling that it gives you, and if it gives you, makes you happy or not. It's this thing that you're getting out, and the feeling and experience that you're getting out of watching this thing. So we're going to be talking a bit about selling point. And when I say selling point, it's basically, you can also call it a goal, but during this presentation I'm going to be referring back to it as selling point. And selling point is, what do you want to say with this picture? Why is the reason that you're doing this, and what do you want the viewer to experience? So we have a few elements that we can use to go back and make your picture as effective and as, how can you say, and as clear in what selling point you have and what you want to say. So we can use these elements to make your statement stronger. So these are some of the things that we're going to be covering in the talk, and they're all going to be leading back to the selling point. So first off, here's the picture I did for Albion Online, which is an online game, and they asked me if I could do an illustration where we send the player off to a quest. And it needed to be intriguing, but also dangerous, and the characters needed to be a bit shady. You have to feel that you're being offered a quest and to go down this dangerous path So this is kind of like one of the feelings, or one of the things that was my main selling point with the picture, and that this is what was very important, that the picture would needed to be, experienced like. So everything had to be clear. Another selling point could be, for example, for this guy, who is Blitzcrank from League of Legends, is one of his main abilities, which is his hook. So that means he punch out like his, I don't know, like his gauntlet flies off and grabs the player and drags him towards you, or drags you towards him. So this needed to be read clearly. So it's an iconic moment of the character doing a thing that he also does in game. And this one is feeling, for example, much more like it's in your face, and it's grabbing your attention, and it's an eye catcher, and you're instantly knowing who it is that's grabbing you. So, so for this talk, we're going to be focusing on maximum oomph, which is the punchiness. But I also just want to say that not all pictures need to have maximum punchiness, only if it goes back and serves the purpose. But I choose to focus on this because mainly that is what I'm doing nowadays, is just making stuff that is very oomphy. So I'm just going to grab a bit of water, and you can like take a deep breath. Okay. So for this one, for example, in compared to the previous one, which is much more eye-catching and just in your face, this picture is one of the ones, or is one of my work that is rewarding the viewer way more in terms of going and exploring. So I would argue that you start over here, you start over with the reaction and the snowball hitting the back of his head. You're going down, you're moving, starting to see the story that's happening here in the back of the tavern, where a knight or a random dude is trying to impress a girl, and she's like, oh. But if you notice, she's holding a sword, so I don't think she's that impressed. You go down, you follow through the table, and there's a guy who's drunk or just asleep, he's probably drunk, and you go up and you see the wanted poster, and you actually go back and you see the cause of and the effects of who's throwing this snowball. And then we're kind of leading the eye through the image and telling small stories within it. So I just wanted to make that clear, that every picture has a different purpose. So you need to always think about this when you're thinking about your selling point and when you're working. So one of the first things we're going to be talking about is contrast. So I know that a lot of people, at least when I was younger and a student myself, I was thinking contrast, oh yeah, black and white, red and green. But contrast is a lot of things, and I wrote a few of them down, and they can be used everywhere. They can be used when you're applying texture, they can be used in your environment, character design, pretty much everything. So, and normally the more kind of contrast you have in here, or the more variation you can give a certain element, the more it can feel like it's believable or has visual interest. So a good exercise is when you're, for example, making illustration, is that you're actually writing down some of the contrasts and so also your selling point, and try to see if you can hit these as you're doing the painting. Also, another great exercise is finding an object and finding all of the contrast that you can find. You can find symmetry, asymmetry, if it's smooth and rough some places, all of these symmetries that you can find. So I also feel that this is in this section is where you can actually find the twists in your story. You can make something way more interesting. So let's say that your story is the lion ate the butterfly. It's like, okay, yeah, that's interesting. It's a story, and it could be cool. But if you twist it around and you say that the butterfly ate the lion, it already starts popping up with a lot of questions, and you're thinking about, hey, wait, how is this happening? And your mind already starting to speculate on this, and it's a way more interesting story. So I think in contrast and trying to flip it, you can find a lot of interest here. So composition and structure and leading the eye. This is from Edgar Payne, his book that's called Composition for Outdoor Painting. It's just like a very quick model to just give you some tools on how I think about composition when I'm working, and it's how you place the objects. So you can use like triangular, so you place your objects in this kind of form. So you can kind of go through them. It's pretty self-explanatory. So you use radiating lines towards your focal point or what you want to say. So it can be sky, road, pretty much anything. So this is like examples that can be used for when you are doing your compositions. And you can combine these. It doesn't need to be one of them, but you can combine them. Am I speaking loud enough? Yeah? Great, awesome. All right, so this is some few tricks that we're also going to be going into a bit later. So distribution of space. So if you're taking your frame or your canvas and you're making everything evenly, this kind of gives you a sense of calmness and balance. And if this is what you want to explain with your selling point or what you want to say, let's say it's a nature piece and it has to be beautiful and it's a girl dancing in the wind, maybe this could be a nice choice because it's calm, it's beautiful. But not when we're doing like maximum oomph. We want it to be in your face. Lorena was like, so we need it to be in your face. We need some dynamic, and we need to be interesting. And a simple way you can do this is put things, or not cut things in halves. So this is a good rule to just think about. And also, every time you see that you're cutting something in half, just move it slightly. You can move, this a bit down. So there is also like a thing that I use maybe too much, but I use it quite a lot, which is like the radiation lines, which is basically lines or objects that is leading you towards the focal point. That being said, you can also use it as a circular line. So that means that you can use the swing to bring it back to your focal point. And together, these can be super effective. So it's just like a nice little thing to add in there. So I hope, is there anybody in here who does know the rule of thirds? Awesome, great, everybody knows it. So I'm just going to skip through this. No, we know this. You place the object in one of the sections, and it's supposed to make it very interesting. So it works, but a very cool thing is where you can start to apply power play and hierarchy using this. So this means that whoever you're going to be putting on top will have the position of dominance normally. You can always flip this. This is just a guideline, but you can use it effectively, I guess. So basically, over here we have the giant. He's looking down on the silly human, and we are not in doubt of who is in power here. It's our giant. Flip it, and where we put the human, we put him up higher, and the giant lower, and all of a sudden, who's in charge now? Another thing is compression. Compression is it's kind of like, I guess, it's if you think about the claustrophobic feeling that you sometimes have in tight spaces. So it's the same thing you can use in your compositions, because it's the same feeling. You are basically putting, for example, we're McCree down here. We're in the high noon moment, and over here what we're saying is that, let's say this is our hero, this is our protagonist. We're saying that he's up against a big obstacle and like a big challenge, but there's hope for him. Like we know that this is a major challenge, but there's a chance. Over here, he's fucked. He's in a very he's in a much worse spot than over here. So you can use this compression to put your pictures or your protagonists or whatever you're portraying in different kind of levels of what can you call it, danger. The same with over here, where you can almost feel like this is an opening, where this is a closing, right? So it makes you feel differently, and you are not completely, you're not in doubt of that over here, this guy is in a much more tight spot. So leading the eye, let's say that we're doing a character piece and we don't have any background to to use. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna try to use all of the elements to push back to where we want the viewer to look. So in this one, what we're gonna be doing is use every fucking thing, sorry for the swearing, we use everything to point it back and lead your eye into our focal point. So this is from the scarves to the feathers to the hair, everything goes in and is functioning as elements to what we want to portray. So let's see. So remember that these are guidelines and rules, and I found this from Titus, and the composition is kind of like a pirate code. It's more guidelines than actual rules, and I think it's pretty spot on. So if something of these rules and guidelines are not fitting with what you want to say, you can break them. If you can argue and you can like say that you can find reasons for why breaking them would serve your intention better, do it. So tangents, just avoid them, or you can also use them. Again, if this is your selling point and you really want to piss off your viewer, you maybe want to make them feel distracted and really annoyed and not knowing what's going on, you can use tangents as a element in your thing, you know. So, but normally try to avoid them. So we're going to be talking a bit about perspective. First off, when we're going to be maximizing oomph and punchiness in our pictures, we're going to be placing a camera where we're going to be seeing it from. So front on can be great, but if we're going for maximum oomph, we're going to be thinking a bit more dynamic and also about the feelings that these camera placements can make you feel. So an upshot can make somebody feel mighty and strong and powerful, where a downshot can make it feel humble and maybe also a bit weak and almost like they're surrendering. You can use this in a lot of ways. But a cool thing is also, like, going back to contrast, is can we use this for a twist? Can we make somebody on downshot feel super powerful, or can we make an upshot very weak and surrendering? So you can always try to see if you can find different interesting contrast by flipping these rules. So just don't be too, caught up in the rules. I'm just saying you can break them too. So hierarchy and distance to the characters. Kind of like what we talked about with the rule of thirds. The higher you place somebody, the more empowered they can become. But it's also like the more close you are to your characters, the more intimate and the more emotional detail you can get from them. So normally when you're close to your character, it feels more personal. Where if you go further away, it can feel like you're observing them and almost like you're stalking them to some degree. So we can also go back to this and we can go, and say, how is this going to help us with the thing that we want to do? The same with your compositions. Like it's the same scene, but we move the camera, and to make it more interesting, or the placement of elements more interesting. If you want to be something that's completely calm and harmonious, I would say that it's the top example is the best one. But if we're going for something that's a bit more dynamic and has a bit more punch to it, I would go for the lower one. Also, this is showing more depth. This is becoming a bit more flat. So C-space. C-space is something that we're using a lot, or I'm using pretty much all the time when I'm working for Riot and I'm doing the splash art that I'm doing. And it's basically, you have the three axes, and I believe it's Y, X, and Z. And Z space is basically when things is coming towards the camera. So if this is the camera, I would put a hand here, or a sword, or a tail, or whatever. So we put stuff in the camera, and then we can also have it this extreme for shortening. So let's try that with an example. For this selling point, we're going to be doing maximum oomph. We're going to make it so extremely dynamic or just in your face as we can. We want this desperado moment of where you just you're flinging your guns around and you're shooting everybody. So we have our girl who's shooting a gun. We're now making it a little bit more interesting, and we're making it a bit more dynamic or more oomph. I'm going to be saying that so much. You're going to be hating me at the end. You're like, Esben, if you say this one more time, I'm going to kill you. It's fine. I'll just hide. So here we have the back arm, for example, which is just going down, and we have a front arm that is coming towards us. If we, for example, move the back arm to going more into the background, now we have actually the front arm, which is actually, think of the character as an environment. You have a foreground, middle ground, background. So in our character, we have all of it. We have our foreground, arm, middle ground, the body, and the back arm, which can function as the background. And then the last part where we really push everything up in your face and make the dominance of this object, for example, or the foreshortening much more extreme. So here's the three things that I'm talking about. Notice how much space that we're giving the gun and the whole action of firing a gun, right? Here, we're giving it a bit more intention. We're making or a bit more, what's it called? Attention. And notice how like this shape is getting bigger, and now it's big. And it's all up in your face, and it's I'm adding in a bit of like tilting it so it has more of a diagonal to make it a bit more interesting and dynamic. So let's say that, for example, that this top one is, I think a good way to look at it is if we were going to portray children playing in the yard. They're playing with like water pistols. So they're playing with water pistols, and the way that their adults are looking at it is pretty much like this. You know, they're all like. But if we move like the story to the kids' world and how they feel about like this gunfight, we're definitely down here. We're like, I'm gonna shoot you, and you know, like this whole feeling of being completely immersed. So just remember that it all goes back to what do you want to say, what do you want the viewer to feel. Also notice that because you can think of it as foreground, middle ground, background, then you can have depth in also bigger shape descending into a perspective. So remember to use this if it serves the point of what you're doing and what you're trying to say. It's not effective in every kind of illustration. For example, here with this guy, there's a little bit of foreshortening, but I could have put the hand straight into the camera's face, but it's saying something different. This guy is not like, hey, I'm doing a spill. It's more, you are the viewer and you're noticing him, and he's like, if you're gonna take one more step closer, I'm gonna fuck you up. It's more like a warning. So this is kind of like more serving to what he's about and what I was trying to convey with this illustration. So we're gonna be moving a bit into texture and detail. So the way that I think about it, I'm not saying like, again, this is like how I work. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I'm just trying to give you the tools that I'm using, or trying to convey how I think about the choices that I make during a painting. So when it comes to texture, I think of it as you would as an environment. You would put a lot of texture in the things that are very close to you. So foreground is going to really receive a lot of texture and detail, and middle ground as well, medium, and background not so much. So we're just going to take an example, break it down, and try to go over it. So the Blitzcrank example is going to be, our focal point is going to be the hook. That's what we wanted to convey in this. We wanted to really make this hand pop out of the image and grab you. So this is going to be our main thing. This is where we're going to be putting a lot of detail and a lot of attention. Then we're going to have our second focal point, which is going to be, we're going to notice that it's Blitzcrank. And then the shoulder of him moving towards us, or just giving a bit more of the depth feeling. So as you kind of like go in and you start detailing these objects or these elements, do notice that you can imply by adding a lot of let's say we're doing the hand here. If you're making this super detailed and you're adding like a lot of texture information and material information here, you can actually get away with implying a lot of the same detail, or you can almost make it like a noise. So if you see over here, I don't know how it goes in your screen when you're sitting here, but you kind of get the feeling that this is as detailed as here, but there's not the same amount of detail, but because this is so detailed, your brain already has the information and can fill out, just by having a bit of noise here, that this part is just as detailed. All right, so when you're going to be detailing as well, you cannot just detail everything, because if you're detailing everything, nothing really matters. Like, you have no place to rest and nothing is important. If everything is important, what's important? So if every little scale is perfect, then it's not really the scales that are nice. So it's kind of like a good example here. This is from Paul Richards, and it's basically saying you have two guns, and the lower gun, there's detail everywhere. Like, everything is important. Maybe you think, like, this is a pretty cool gun. Yeah, it can be, but if you have to read it also from a distance, it's just going to be a mess of information. So put the details in where it's needed and where it's important, and have areas of rest so your detail pops out more. It's kind of like if you put saturation everywhere, it's not going to feel very saturated, because in order for it to pop, there needs to be contrast. There needs to be the opposite, so that one spot feels so juicy and so nice. It's the same with detail. So you can think about it as busy and calm. You can make detail blurred, some sharp, and saturated, desaturated. You have a lot of tools here. So just as an example, I'm going to do like a small quick, quick breakdown of how it was done for this piece, where when I work, or normally work, I like to start at the points that have the highest priority, where I want the viewer to look. So we're starting to fill in these areas, so we make sure that everything that we're going to be detailing afterwards is not stealing attention away from our focal. So here we started off with detailing the glove and the face, and we're also going to be putting a bit more detail over here. So this is the final one. So everything has to, like, lead and be nice and not try to steal the attention too much away from what is actually important. Also, when you're doing detail, you can actually use your detailing and the strokes in your details to actually lead your eye again. So, for example, for the hair, you can use your strokes and you can use the detail in the hair to use as an indicator to move it back to your focal point. Same with the arrows, the strokes of your cape of the cape, and all of like the wrinkles of the cape. So all of these things are elements that you can think about. Here's a small breakdown of how I work. I'm not saying like this is how you should work. I'm just saying this is how I do it, and I find it effective. So basically, I'm starting off first with the shape of the object, and just defining it a bit more, making it feel more like a glove. So this is supposed to be a leather glove, and giving it a bit more specular, and making it a bit darker. I think it was a bit too gray and too mid-tonish. I wanted it to feel like more like a specular glove. So I did this. And here I started thinking about, I could actually take this and I could render it to be a perfect, nice leather glove. But we can make it more interesting. We can do this by thinking about contrast and how we can add a bit more contrast in here. So most of this glove is in the colder tones, which is you can see, temperatures, so it's blue. So I was thinking, okay, if we have this leather and it's used, we can actually show some of this usage. We can show that this object has been used. So I started, okay, maybe part of the surfaces where it's been used a lot or where there's a lot of movement has been worn and torn. So we're gonna add in the the material under the surface of the leather. So here you see that I'm starting to add in this that I just mentioned, and you can kind of see the difference. And it also adds a nice complementary color to the blue. So it makes the glove a bit more interesting. Finally, just adding a few more detailing to make it pop more. So when you're detailing, it's a nice kind of way to think about, or this is a kind of nice way to think about it. You have the light side and you have the dark side. You have to pick one, or you can. It's a guideline, so pick one that you want to put your detail in. Ryan Lang here has no detail in it. For example, his lights. All the detail is in the shadow areas, where on the other side we have an image where everything is in the light and there's no detail in the shadow parts. So color and light. Just to break it down, it's super simple. We have if I had to break down color and light in the most basic level, it would be to do this. It would be to have direct and indirect light. You can also think as indirect light as ambient light or diffuse light. But just like a nice simple way is to think direct and indirect. And when you put these two together, you can have the feeling that something is being lit. So it's a very powerful way of just simplifying it down, and it's effectful. Let's see. All right. So when thinking about when you're going to be lighting your object or whatever your scene is, always think about go back to your selling point and think, how do I want this person to feel? Like, what am I trying to say? If I was going for something had to feel menacing or spooky, I would go with maybe an underlighting. Like, underlighting feels super unnatural and it makes you kind of eerie. Where if you want something that's more natural and beautiful, you can have a top light. So this is just a few examples. But again, try to think of contrast, and if you can flip it and make it work. So maybe you make a super eerie painting out in broad daylight instead of using an underpainting or an underlight. Right. So here's a small example of, imagine, I know it's super crude and you can't really see much, but I had to do it fast. So this is a scene of a villain or a king, a mad king, and he just killed a servant, or he killed somebody. We have a killer here. So if you're lighting him like this, where you're almost putting like so much focus on his face and you're really making him pop against the background, you're basically it's more like a hero moment. You're basically saying, like you feel like the sun is shining down on him and everything is kind of feeling glad and dandy. Where if you think about it the other way around and you want the feeling to be mystery and you want him to feel dangerous and you can't read this guy, hide his face. Don't give away too much emotion. So we hide his face in the shadow and only maybe put a bit of light of the action that he's just have done. So when it comes to light and value structures, it can be broken down into very simple steps. So full range, which is where you have the full range of white to dark, and it can give the sense of something like it's very good use in, for example, very epic scenes where you want to show off a lot of scale. You have high key, which is basically where you have the values, which is towards the light spectrum. So you don't really have any darks. You go from medium to white, and this feeling can be very like lighthearted and almost like divine or holy. I would say it can also be used as. So you have high key with accent. This is where you put a dark accent in your high key structure. So you put maybe your characters in there, so they just pop out a bit more. Mid key, it's pretty self-explanatory, but I'm gonna cover it anyways. If you want something to feel a bit more mundane and boring. Low key with accent, this is pretty much the same, you just flip it. Mainly low key value structures, and then you just pop it out with a nice light at the focal point where you want the viewer to look. Low key, you use the low key, the low value, sorry, I'm nervous still, but you use the values that are in the lower spectrum of values. So a good way to like move on to colors, also just to think about warm and cool. So normally when I also think about contrast, I think about if I can make something colder and then pop it up with a warm. So this is a nice exercise to do to make it feel like it's in an environment. And I'm going to be showing some examples on where this applies. Let's see. So, all right. So we have I can never say this word. Can somebody please say it? Simultaneous contrast. Thank you. Whew. I need some water. But it's basically how and color can appear different depending on what it's next to. So there's a very quick example over here where this is the same kind of gray, but it feels maybe that it's a bit different. It's the same with this box where you have, I would say it's a green brownish, where you feel that this has a bit more, what's it called, maybe yellow to it, or maybe more green, depending on the screen. But it's basically almost the same color, but it's a difference because there's a slight difference in the contrast. All right, let's see. So when you're going to be lighting your scene, think about, think about the feeling again and the setting point and what you want it to feel like. And this can be done very effectively with your lighting. So again, we use, for example, what we talked about with the value structures. We can use a mid key to make it feel mundane. We can use high key with maybe like a small dark accent to what is important for something that's a bit more calm. So we can use this very effectively in this way. And of course, you cannot be talking about maximum oomph and maximum powerness or punchiness without covering complementary colors. It's being used all over its time, and we've seen it thousands of times, and it's very effective for a reason. So I'm just breaking it down on some of the pieces that I've been doing, where we have purple against yellow, orange against blue, or you can also say that it's yellow and purple, blue against orange, and orange against blue. Then you can also, like, if you're sick and tired of complementary colors, and if you kind of have to do like these punchiness pictures all day long, eventually you'll get a bit tired of it. So you're gonna try to see and take different paths. So you can have something that's just cold and warm. It doesn't need to be a complementary color. It can be all warm, like the, what's it called, like the picture down here, but where you just have a bit of cold front light to just pop out your focal point. The same with the guy over here. Pretty much the whole environment is a cold green where we use a warm green to where we want the viewer to look. The last one is saturation, and that means that you just use the most saturated thing in the scene to make your viewer look there. So it's basically, it's pretty self-explanatory. So you use saturation to where you want the viewer to look. All right, so a quick breakdown on some of the thoughts when we were doing this. So mainly I started to think about which light and what temperature and color this light would have. So we went for blue because we want her to feel a bit dangerous and a bit cold. So we went for a blue key light, added a rim light to pop out the face and the focal a bit more. After that, we added a warm ambient light from below. I'm just going to go back and forward so you can maybe see it a bit better. And then we used like the complementary that we were talking about earlier, just to pop it out and really make it crisp. So some nice orange, warm, complementary colors in the eyes and in the arrowhead. Also, you can something that you can also use is, for example, that if you're making a glow, you can actually use that as an arrow to pull it back into where you want the viewer to look. So presentation, and this is one that I feel very strongly about. So you remember in the start when I said I wasn't prepared? And that feeling that when you were thinking like, oh shit, I should have gone to the other one. I should totally have gone to the other one. It's something that I think most artists are really forgetting. They don't pay attention to presentation, or they don't think about it. And it's something that I've been very conscious about since school, and I believe it was a teacher who taught me it. So just to show you a quick example, so this was the start, I'm sorry. So this was the start, and you remember the feeling that you had. It was not a good feeling, and your appetite for this workshop just plummeted. You're like, yeah, let's go to the other one. So all of this is appetite, and the way you present your product is going to influence the appetite of your receiver. So let's say that we have, I call this the Lobster Story. It's brilliant, right? So I call this the Lobster Story. I used all day on this. every single thing, and it's beautiful. Anyway, so the Lobster Story, here it goes. So you go into this fancy restaurant and you're in a very good mood and you're feeling great and you want to celebrate. You go in and you look at the menu and it's super expensive, but you go for the most expensive thing on the menu, which is lobster, for some reason. So you order this lobster and your appetite is through the roof. You're ready and you're drooling and you're just like, oh, when is this lobster coming? Finally, the waiter opens the door, comes in with the lobster. It's on a golden plate and it looks delicious. You're just looking at it and your teeth is running in water and you're ready to dig in. And right before you're ready to dig in, the waiter says, hold on a second. Takes the lobster, just goes back into the kitchen, takes this old carton and clearly used, what's it called? Plate. Thank you. So you definitely use like this clearly used, fat-stained carbon plate, and you get like plastic, what's it called, a fork and knife, and he says, all right, now you can eat. What just happened there? It's the same thing that when you went into this presentation, your appetite for the presentation just went completely down. Now, before you were like, yes, I'm ready to, I want this lobster, I want to eat it right now. But now you're thinking about, I'm not really sure I want to eat this. It's the same product, but the way it's being presented changes your attitude towards this object completely. It's the same with your work. If you should, like, I'm not saying like that everybody should do it, but it should be something that you're thinking about. It's like you can be presenting when you're building a portfolio and you're sending it off to a client, you can be presenting it super, oh yeah, I did like a sketch and it's great. Or you can use an hour or more and make a nice presentation out of it. You can show the sketches that you did in the ideation of the character. You can show a small map. Like this map took, I think, 5 minutes. You can just show like a map of where you thought that this character would be, and you can start to branch out and show more of the world and your thought process of this thing. So it's an hour or more, and I think we can agree that this presentation gives you a lot more appetite than the one on the left one. This is all presentation. So I think it's about a month ago, I was asked, I was sitting and I was working on a personal website, and I wanted, there we go. I wanted to do a new personal website. But I was also asked, like, why are you spending so much time and energy on this when you got like so many good platforms where you can post your things? And it's completely true. But I had an old website which looked like this, and the statement and the selling point that this is saying, it looks like a default carbon-made website, and it kind of says, hey, I am Esben, I have a website like pretty much everybody, and I do a bunch of stuff, but it's not really focused. So I have like a bit of characters and environments and all these things, where the one on the right side says that it's more unique, and it's much more slick, and it's a nicer presentation of the same work. So this is what I'm saying. You already put so much effort into making your art and making it super nice. Spend the extra time to present it nicely. So it comes, and I think like after launching the website, it's been really successful and it's been working a lot more. And I also think that if you want to attract clients that are not necessarily in the industry, I think they're gonna be looking for a personal website way more and look at in different eyes, as if they were being sent another platform, let's say DeviantArt or ArtStation. So it just gives off a more professional image of your work and what you're doing. So think about what your selling point is. Like for me, right now I'm focusing on making illustrations that are very dynamic and are popping out. So that's my selling point, and that's the clients that I'm attracting. But think about like if you are a traditional artist, your selling point should be what kind of makes you do that thing and makes you passionate and makes you want to keep doing that thing. Like if you, let's say you want to work for Blizzard and you have a bunch of, I don't know, very toony Skylander things and vehicles and all of these things. It's not really a selling point that is saying, I want to work with you guys. You need to then think about, okay, maybe I should do work that is towards that style and that's that world. So think about also like if you're, for example, let's say you're one of the best environment artists, I would sell then I would be you, and I'll be like, I would sell myself as that. I would show how great the environments are. So just make some thoughts up about what is special to you. And I actually think this is the end of it. So we're going to be moving to a bit of Q&A. If you got any questions, anything. But I was also thinking, but this is totally up to you, if we do an imaginary picture where we go through the elements of composition, contrast, everything, and we try to make all of the decisions beforehand, or if you just want to do Q&A. So hands up for Q&A, and afterwards we're going to take the other. Who want to do Q&A? We can do Q&A after as well, but if you want to do Q&A now, what would that? All right, so who want to do the imaginary picture? I think the imaginary picture won. All right, let's try it. So I'm gonna need a picture or something like a selling point. I need something that we're trying to say. So I would say, Will, can you come up with a cool picture? Or something in a kitchen. Food Wars. Food Wars is cool. So because Food Wars maybe implies action, let's try to take maybe take something a bit more, because we already covered maximum punchiness and maximum oomph, and I think when it's war, I would maybe go with something that's action. So let's try to instead make it a picture about a family at a dinner table where the father just have cheated. So it has to be like a yeah. He's just been what's it called? We just found out, or the family just found out that he has been fooling around. So what are some of the feelings that we want to be in this story and in this picture? Betrayal is a very good one. Yes. Betrayal, awkwardness, what? Anger. Yeah. But maybe what we want is maybe not, for example, her, like what's it called, being enraged, but maybe we want her to be like in focused anger, right? Disgusted. Oh, I love that one. All right, so now we already have some feelings and a selling point that we're trying to say with our picture. So let's try to go back in the presentation and try to make some of the choices that we would do when we were doing the picture. So now we're going to be painting an imaginary picture just from our thoughts and analyzing what we want it to be. All right? Oh yeah, cool. Oh, we are back in the beginning. All right, so we want there to be tension, right? So we need the contrast, and I think one of the most important part in this scene is going to be the contrast between the father and the wife. So we know that the father has just been fooling around, and maybe he is also acknowledging that he's fucked up. So I'm thinking that the father should be, or could be, broken, where or passive, where she can be the aggressive or active one. So we can have anger, or what's it called, surrender, and a dominant one. So I guess that our dominant one is going to be our wife, and we're going to have the what's it called? It's the husband. Sorry, my English is getting away sometimes. And the husband is a much more embarrassed, also because it's maybe being done right in front of the kids, right? So, yeah, shame. Yeah, exactly. That's the word I've been looking for. So we want him to feel shame, right? So we're already thinking about some of the contrast that we can have. And just as like, if we want to make this a picture where we want to go explore, we can use the kids and the contrast in kids, right? So we can have the kids making like showing in their body language and in their face what they're thinking about it. So maybe the youngest one thinks it's a joke and it's just like I don't know, or maybe it's not even that smart. You can just add in a funny thing. So we make the whole, or we add a bit of funniness into a very tense situation. So maybe there's a toddler throwing around food. This could be like a small kind of Easter egg in there to just twist and add a bit more contrast in the whole atmosphere of the setting. So composition, I think what we're going to go for, because it's a bit more mundane, everyday situation, we're going to be going for something that's aesthetic. We don't want dynamism, and we don't want a lot of foreshortening, right? It's not necessarily speaking towards what we're trying to achieve. So we could go with something that's cross, and we can also use radiating lines in terms of the room frame, like picture frames on the walls, to maybe use this as pulling us into like the picture. Let's see. Also, what we can actually be thinking about is like, if we're going to be feeling like we're witnessing this as an outsider, like you remember when I said the closer we are, the more personal and emotional it feels. Let's try to go away and maybe think about, what about if we use the tunnel, right? If we see, so the tunnel is you see something, a scene through a tunnel. So what is what could be a tunnel in our everyday life? Door. So if we're seeing all of this, or the whole of this scene through the door, I guess you could make it work, but I think for this one, I would not choose to kind of use the door, because it would kind of limit a little bit of how I can picture the frame, but it can really show, I think, if we have a window or an open, or maybe just a pillar, we can actually show separation between the two. So if the pillar is cutting down right between the father and the family, we just already know what's going to happen. It's the separation of the family, because we have this huge line that is cutting the father away from the picture. Does that make sense? So already there, we're thinking about compositional elements that can add into what we're trying to say. And I think that's a very strong statement, actually. The father just cheated, and now we already are getting a glimpse into what is going to happen afterwards. He's going to be being cut out, right? So we have maybe an element that is going to exactly cross him from the family at the dinner table. So as we talked about distribution of space, we should maybe go for something that's a bit more static. Also because we want it to be mundane, and we wanted people to really go and explore. Radiating lines, we can use some, but it would be very slight ones. Power play, we can use this, for example, if we have, let's say, okay, so we have the father, and if we imagine that the mother is sitting here, the father is sitting here, we can use this power play in order to maybe show that the mother's in control. So maybe she is a lot more, upright. She is in control. She's angry, but she's going to be like, and the father can be bowed down, and just slightly we can add this hierarchy of her being on top and him being shameful and knowing that he's been doing wrong. So here we can use the power play that we were coloring before, and then we're talking about how we can use it in the picture that we're just making right now. Compression we can use as in, we want to make him feel that he's in a tight spot. Maybe the pillar could be the solution here, because it's already functioning as a separation of the family, which is a kind of metaphor for what is going to happen after this scene. So it's a symbolism in the frame itself. So we can put this frame or the pillar and maybe another object to just squeeze it into this like really tight spot. So so making it feel very uncomfortable for him. Sorry. Leading the eye. All comes back to like which elements we put in the scene. For example, something that could be leading the eye is maybe that there's a dog on the floor, like kind of looking back into the frame or into at the table of what is happening. So we can add, or it could be toys on the floor that is leading our eyes back into the frame. And the way you position these toys could be like an arrow pointing back into the frame. So think of all like everyday objects that can help you lead the eye in the frame. I wouldn't really use tangents here. Okay, so I think for this, as we already established, we're going to be doing front on. It's everyday kind of feeling we want. Hierarchy, we're going to be maybe looking at not too close, so we're going to be almost seeing it completely symmetrical, so completely sideways, almost like a straight side view, but just maybe tilted a little bit to get a bit of depth and a bit more of the perspective in there. So I wouldn't go completely sideways, I just added a little bit, just a slight tilt. So here, for example, for this example, we're way more up here than down here. All right. C-space, I wouldn't be using much of it. It would be foreground, middle ground, background, almost like the picture that we're having down here. So this is almost the same. Just imagine a table and the tree being maybe like we're going to have it here, and the father is going to be cut off from the rest of the family who's sitting over at the other side. Texture detail, it's pretty simple. We're going to be detailing the things that are important to what we're going to try to say. So what we're going to be detailing is the face expression is going to be extremely important. We want to show that she's angry, but she's trying to control. So we need to try to capture that face. So that detail is going to be crucial for what we're trying to say. The same with the father. We need to be sure that our body language and his whole, maybe we're showing a little bit of expression, that all of this is reading into the thing and the story that we're trying to say. So these should be our priority points when we're starting detailing it. And what we could do, for example, in the texture detail is we could blur the foreground because the foreground might not be as important, and keep the focus and all the details in the middle ground. When it comes to lighting, let's see. When it comes to lighting, I would have it just as the choice that we had for the composition. I would have it feel like a everyday kind of lighting. It's the family is sitting at the dinner table like they do every other day, so it has to feel like a normal day. So just go home, look at your family's house and how your dinner table is lit, and you can pretty much maybe use that if it's the right feeling and it serves the cause. All right, so let's see. Maybe we can also use, for example, the same thing that we talked about with the villain. Because we want to show shame in the father, maybe we can also make a separation with him using light, right? We already have the pillar, and we have him who's down on the table, and he's shameful, he's not proud of what he did. So we're going to be using light to use this, to show that he's in a dark place and he's actually being cut off. So let's say that the lamp that's hanging over the dinner table is maybe cutting his head off, or but it has it's only lighting him from here and below, and the rest of the family we can see all of their expressions. This is using the light to also convey how he's feeling inside. He's in a dark place, and he's just been. He's been fooling around and he's super shameful. So we can use the light to tell this, right? So we're using all of the elements to say and go back to the selling point. When it comes to value structure, which value structure would you feel would go well with this kind of setting? I would say mid-key, but it could also be high key with accent or low key with accent. Actually, it could be high key with accent, where our accent is going to be the father and the way that he's like in the dark, where everything else is a bit brighter and nice. But I would maybe, if it was me, I think I would go for the mid key, which is a bit more, the mundane feeling. Though thinking about it, I would add a bit more light in there. So high key, accent probably. Warm and cold. So let's say that we have the separation of the family now established, and he's in the dark, like a little bit in the dark, and they are in the light. So let's make it when something feels nice and warm, like you remember like the feelings when it's like this, like in a sauna. When everything is nice and warm, it can feel very welcoming. So we can use the light from the living room or from the dining room. We can use the light here that is shining on the family. We can make that warm. It feels like a family. It feels like a warm and welcoming. Where the shadow area of where the dad is being cut off and away from the family, we can make colder. It doesn't need to be like orange, blue. It just needs to be what we talked about in simultaneous contrast. Just be slightly less warm, so it's colder than the surroundings. Color-wise, I think I would go for, it doesn't need to be complementary or anything, it just needs to feel like a very mundane, normal day. So no major pops. So maybe we could go with something like saturation. All right. And then, of course, when we painted all of this, we would present it in a nice way. And I think that's our picture.